What is up, guys, and welcome to episode 9 of the Dad's Life Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Flack 2.0. In today's episode, I'm going to be changing it up. If you've been listening to the last 8 episodes, you're kind of wondering if I'm a dad or not, the way I talk about kids. So, before we get into it, just want to kind of let you guys know what's going on for this past week. It currently is Martin Luther King Day here, 2019. So today would be the 21st. So it is January 21st, Martin Luther King Day. So happy Martin Luther King Day. You know, out there's a lot of protests and things going on, rallies, a bunch of rallies going on. One definitely great day to be celebrated. As far as last episode goes, I did talk about, the title was like, it's okay to lose your shit. And if you haven't checked it out, check out the episode now. It's episode number 8. That's where I kind of revealed, like, I actually have a teenage son that is been diagnosed with ADHD. So, again, going to change up the tone. So I've been dealing with some issues with that. Some crazy things going on at work, but I'm not here to talk about that, but that's also been weighing on my mind. So, other than that, though, I really can't complain. Last week was just another week, and again, this is why I'm here recording this podcast, to change it up a little bit and follow my dream, as I encourage all of you to. So, anyway, let's get right into our episode. So, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about, I'm not going to say top 5 because there's so many things that I do love about it, but I am now going to talk about some of the great things that I enjoy, or whatever you want to call it. But one of the great things I'm proud of and things I love about being a dad. Now, I know in the last 8 episodes, it's all been about don't have kids, it's a sacrifice, it's hard, and it is. But today, 9 episodes in, now I'm going to start talking about how good it is to be a dad, how great it feels to be a dad, and along with those challenges. So, there's a lot of memes, that people say that, the best day of my life was when I became a dad, and I told you that that's a lie. And that's a lie, hindsight. But when I first saw my son, when I first saw my oldest, it was great. I couldn't believe it. Like, there were extenuating circumstances behind that, which I'm not going to go into that in the detail. But when I finally held him, I had him in my arms, like, this is my guy. This is my little dude, And yes, it was exciting. Yes, it was scary. But he's my son. So a couple of things that I love is really being a teacher. I'd have to say that'd be the first one of, like, my top 5 things that I love about being a dad, is being a teacher, being a mentor, directly and indirectly. As I've said, you elevate your children, thus you elevate yourself. So if you want more for your kids, you kind of in turn get more for yourself. So one of the main things that I do love about being a dad, and not always saying that the message is always heard, but is your part in being a mentor, your part in, teaching your kids and keeping them close. So that's one of the main things, is I do love that aspect of teaching. And then, of course, through that, if you want to set a good example, then you generally have to elevate yourself. So in turn, when I had my son, it actually pushed me to be a better person, and it pushed me and challenged me, and I had to step up, and there was no other option at that point. And that's one of the main things about being a dad, that is challenging but satisfying at the same time. So being a mentor, being a teacher, so that'd be one of them. And again, they're in no particular order, so just kind of bear with me. And so the next thing I definitely love about being a dad is the quirks that, watching them grow up and seeing the quirks that they have, and knowing, like, first of all, you got one thought, or, one of the two thoughts. One is like, wow, that's just like me. Or, where did you get that from? So the quirkiness of the kids and watching them, watching him grow up and kind of go through all his phases, and kind of reminding myself of how I was when I was a kid too, like kind of laughing at myself, or I remember I did something like that. That was so stupid. So just the quirks of watching them grow, watching them grow up. It's definitely bittersweet because watching them grows up means it's less and less time I'm gonna have them as a kid. Um, but I love that part, like that. Oh man, I remember when I was that stupid. Kind of rolling into the next thing is watching them grow. There's going to be challenges, yes, and there's going to be lessons that you're trying to teach and they won't learn. But then when they finally get it, that proud moment that you get, like, wow, that's just like me. I taught them that, or I was that example that showed them how to be a better person, or to treat people right, or whatever the case is. And we're talking about boys, like knowing how to treat a lady or be respectful or having manners or those things, because you can be proud of yourself that's the example you put, and then your kids in turn took that to heart as like a life lesson and were pretty good. So let's see. What else do I like about being a dad? Regarding my little ones, I will say, I used to be the guy that, I love coming home to peace and quiet. I love coming home to peace and quiet. And after I had my kids, that kind of changed. And some days I still want my peace and quiet, but there was a couple times when I came home and the wife had took the kids out and there was nobody home. And I missed them. Like, wait, my kids are supposed to be here. They're supposed to be here. Oh, Dada's here. Or, it's a Dada. And coming home to the kids and, seeing their faces light up when you walk through the door, I'd have to say, has to maybe be like at least number 2, if not number 1. Because the moment that I didn't have them, I was like, where are they? Wait a minute. This is not how this works. Like, I'm supposed to walk in the house and, kids are supposed to light up. Dada is home. Yes. So, coming home to them, seeing their excited faces, that definitely has to be at least 2 or 1. And, the way it kind of hit me when they weren't here, it's probably number 1. Let's see. Other things that I like, and, this may be like, again, it's like bittersweet, and it kind of goes into that watching them grow and things like that, is watching them go into their own hobbies and like finding their own thing. And I find it bittersweet because I kind of want them to be what I'm into. I'm into some cool stuff, and then you have to kind of balance that, like, okay, I wanted my son to be in martial arts because I'm into martial arts. Did he take to it? No, not really. And I kind of bummed me out. But he is his own person. And that may not be his thing. And that's fine. But, watching them grow, watching them get into their own things and seeing what they're going to get into, I'd have to say definitely that's going to be, one of the great things about, being a dad. And you know what? I'd have to say the last thing I'm going to say on this particular topic is there is no other feeling that you get when it comes to pride and watching your kids succeed. And I'm going to talk about that in this next segment here, but when you see your kids succeed and you see the hard work you put into them, it finally clicks and they finally get it and they're super happy that they got it, and in your heart of hearts that it was because also your hard work and dedication went into that. Yeah, there's no greater feeling than knowing that, you were a part of that success. You were that success. You taught that success, however you want to say it. But it was there's no greater feeling than that, seeing your hard work pay off. Now, I've said before that, being a dad, being a parent in general is not instant gratification thing. So don't think it's just going to happen overnight. So those are some of the things that I love about being a dad. What are some things you love about being a dad? Hit me up with a voicemail or any kind of description, I'm sorry. Any kind of comments or anything like that. You can hit me on Twitter. Don't forget, at Sean Flack. And, of course, the Sean Flack 2.0 Facebook page. Also, kind of hitting up on that, there is a Dad's Life podcast group page that is connected to Sean Flack 2.0. So check that out as well if you want to go ahead and contact me, leave me a message there. That'd be awesome. So again, what are some of the things you love about being a dad? I'd love to hear from you guys. The next segment I'm going to talk about is not necessarily the most, I don't know. It's another challenge. And it only comes up now because I'm dealing with more of it and more of it and more of it. So again, I want this to be a very fluid and not scripted podcast. So as certain things pop up, I'm just going to talk about it in the podcast. And so this week, and I don't know if you listened to last week's episode, and if I'm repeating myself, I do apologize. I kind of restarted this particular episode 4 times, I think. So, in my last episode, I kind of revealed that, my son, I have an older son, and he's 14 years old, and he was diagnosed with ADHD. Now, with that, when you're dealing with a 14-year-old boy by itself is kind of a challenge. We're just now trying to finish up middle school. But he was diagnosed with ADHD in the 4th grade, I want to say. And I kind of want to talk about this because it's probably going to be a large focus of a lot of the content because that's the major thing we're dealing with right now. And again, if I want this to be a fluid, real, down-to-earth podcast, I'm going to be talking about things that affect me on the weekly, because this is a weekly podcast, on the weekly with being a dad. So what we're dealing with right now is 14-year-old teenage boy, hormones plus ADHD. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about ADHD, but initially when he was diagnosed, I was like, no, he's not. He's just a boy. He's just whatever. And as we kept getting some of the same remarks about his behavior, his attention span, blah, 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 blah. We got him tested, and I still kind of think the test is a little bogus, but there were a lot of things that came into the light because of it. But it did explain a lot, and once I kind of accepted that he was ADHD, I was like and me and my wife were so against the medication. And we're so against the medication, we're so against the medication, we kind of did everything. We did our little research and kind of changed his diet up and made sure he got enough sleep and put little lists, little reminder lists for him to follow and things like that to kind of, not have to go the medication route. Well, things didn't get any better as far as like some behavior issues and marks he was getting at school, and his grades weren't the best at the time. But what do you expect from a 4th grader? Whatever. So, we ended up going to an ADHD class, and this is through our medical care provider or whatever. And it opened up our eyes to a lot of different things. And there's a lot of things you could do prior to doing the medication to help ADHD. And what I liked about the class is that they pushed those things. They pushed, hey, make sure to get enough sleep. Turn off the electronics at night. Have them read a book instead. Check their sugar levels. Don't, change their diet. Don't let them eat a bunch of junk. What else is it? Give them the list, give them this, give them that, and just kind of set yourself up before you even go into the meds. And so, crazy enough, our research kind of said the same thing, and we already had all that stuff in place. And then once we decided to do the meds, they kind of started off slow. But again, with the class, they're like, if you're going to do the meds, all this stuff has to be put in place first. The sleeping, the diet, the activity, the exercise, all that stuff has to be put in place first before we do the medication. Because a lot of a lot of mistakes made where, okay, well, let's automatically go to medication, and then they're still woke at 11 o'clock at night because they're on their telephone or they're on a screen or they're watching a movie and they're not getting enough rest and they're irritable and all these different things. And then you blame the medication, like the medication is not working. And so you ramp up until the dosage is like really high and you're like, why isn't it working? And then the doctors go back and say, well, what are they eating? Like, what is their diet? What does their exercise look like? And it's like, oh, well, we let them play the video game till midnight. They have a TV in their room. They're eating snacks and chips and drinking all sorts of sodas and all that stuff. And that actually counteracts the medication. So once we went to that class, we decided to go the medication route, and it worked. It worked for the most part. We stopped getting the grades. Then we had to start dealing with 14-year-old boy. So the challenges with that is that we have a high standard for him, and it's not a high standard for him to it's not a high standard to make him feel like less than. Like some people, when I'm talking to some of my friends, some of my coworkers are like, dude, your standards are too high. They're too high. Like, he can't do it. He can't do this. He's not getting that little whim of success. He's not, it's not motivating him to blah, 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 blah. And we've come into that, realization that, yes, it is hard. It is. We are pushing and we are pushing hard. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but basically we ran into a counselor who basically had said, you know what, you're doing the right thing. Like, a lot of misconception with ADHD is you give them so much of a crutch that you don't push them. You don't push them enough. So, she had interviewed and talked to the boy and said, you know what, it seemed like he's more than capable. So push him. There's so many cases where the parents don't, and they give them such a crutch that they don't push them, that they're okay with mediocrity, and the kids don't realize their full potential. So she was like, he is more than capable than being pushed, and to get those A's and not settle for D's and C's. Like, he's more than capable to do that, so you need to, no matter how hard it is. So, I come to say this, and it kind of ties into my very first piece of what I love about being a dad and being that mentor, is right now, dealing with my ADHD son, it's not easy. It's not. And that goes into an earlier episode that talked about hard work doesn't pay off immediately for being a dad, but eventually it will. And I truly believe that. And, being that mentor, putting in this hard work, dealing with his, here goes the explicit part, his bullshit ass attitude, I know it's going to pay off. And I know pushing him, when he looks back, I'm going to assume, I'm going to, put a 95, 98% bet that he's going to thank us that he was pushed and that, more was expected out of him, and that he had to push himself, and that he had people to support him. Like, even though how hard it was, we're still giving him, more tools and more, unfortunately, more conversations and discussions about things, and just pushing and pushing and pushing him to hopefully one day, like, it breaks through with some effort on his part and some tweaking of here and there things, because it's always going to be an adjustment, but always being on him so that he could be a better person, so he could be a better version of himself and not be okay with the person that he is now. Now, not to say that that's a bad thing, but with ADHD, you do a lot of adjusting, and like when you're mediocre, you don't push yourself because you just adjust to being mediocre and being okay with that. Also, you're impulsive. So you kind of don't hold on to lessons that long. You just kind of make a decision, or, it goes in one ear and out the other, and the control kind of disappears when it comes to thinking and thought process. Well, if we don't push him to try to maintain or retain any of these lessons or anything like that, he's going to get out there in the world, and the world is not going to be so relenting. So, going back to my original thing, I love my kids. I love them to death, and I love being a dad. And there's so many great things that, so many great things that I know myself, if I didn't have children, I wouldn't be able to feel, like the emotion of pride and being proud, and, having these different, instances where that's a little me. And I remember when I was going through that, or I remember this, I remember that, and kind of like reliving some of who I was, and either number one, saying, hey, this person's on the right path, or hey, I made the same bonehead mistakes, but I know I turned out okay, or, just being that mentor, being that dad. I could have not felt a lot of these things. I'd have missed out on so much by not being a dad. So, changing it up, sharing a little bit more about who I am and things that I'm dealing with. Being a dad, it is a sacrifice. Still, it is. I still haven't had that 100% payoff yet, but I know that my hard work one day is going to pay off, if not making a better version of myself, like through my son. I want to give him more opportunities, and not necessarily give him a free ride, but show him that he could reach for more than what I had. Show him that the world was bigger than what I knew it was to be, so he and the other kids could have those opportunities that I didn't have, or my wife didn't have. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that hard work. I'm excited for the sacrifice that's going to come with it, that comes with being a dad. And so, yeah, I mean, it's rough. And I am going to be talking more about ADHD and things that we do. And if you're interested in any of that, or have any advice or anything like that, that's also what the Dad's Life podcast is about. We are dealing with different kids with different issues. And being a father, there isn't that much support out there. Like, I do follow a couple, and I've said this before, but they're not really that serious. And I want this to be something that's real. And, some of us as men, we can't express that need, or that, that ask, like, oh, I want you, I need help doing this, I need help doing that. Like, we're always stuck in this whole machismo, I can figure this out, I don't need any help. And that is a misconception as well. Just like a lot of misconceptions with ADHD and all these different things. Let's be out here, let's support each other. Let's lift each other up. Let's be very proud that we made a decision that changed the rest of our life, and we're stepping up to the plate, and we're handling our business, and we're being dads. And I know there's a lot of dads out there that didn't have the dad, and that they're trying to do their best to step it up, and maybe they need help and they need support as well. And so that's what this podcast is about as well. So that basically wraps up the episode. If you're interested in the ADHD thing, and I am going to be talking about it, go ahead and give it a follow. You can find the Dad's Life podcast on the main thing is Google Podcast, and what is it, iTunes podcast app on iTunes, or whatever the case is. Also on the Anchor app, because I am using Anchor right now to host the Dad's Life podcast. So go ahead and check us out there. If you have any questions, comments, or emotional outbursts, don't be afraid to follow me at Sean Flack on Twitter, or like and share the Sean Flack 2.0 Facebook page, and join the Dad's Life podcast group through there. I definitely want to talk about it. I want to hear about what you guys have to share. What is some of the best things that you love about being a dad? What are some of the challenges? Let's support each other. Also, just, do within your kids, how do I say this? Make them better versions of yourself. Make them better versions of yourself. And not like vicariously live through them, but, Give them those opportunities that you didn't have, that you wish you had. Teach them things that you wish you knew. Don't give them things you wish you had. Teach them. Teach them the things and they're not gonna. We're boneheads and we're grown up, so don't expect that. But put in the effort. Do the best efforts you can, and yeah, that's gonna be the message. Make your kids better than you. Give them more opportunities. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy being the dad. Find those things within all that sacrifice that you love about doing what you're doing. And let's support each other. Anyway, that wraps it up. Episode 9 of the Dad's Life podcast. Thank you for listening. Until next week, have a good week, and we'll talk to you then. All right. Peace.